Katzcradul here. It is past midnight and all of my family is in bed except for me, but I wanted to get this video up. I promised you that I was going to show you how to wax cheese, and that I'm going to do. I have two 8-ounce blocks of cheese here on my cutting board that I've cut in half. So for all practical purposes, they're 4-ounce blocks of cheese, because that's what I would typically use for the three of us if I added it to the top of a casserole or something like that. These have been sitting out at room temperature for several hours. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a I'm about ready to wax my cheese that has been drying for more than 48 hours, and I wanted to show you before I open this. This is the cheese wax I use. It comes from England Cheesemaking Supply Company, and they're in South Deerfield, Massachusetts. I'll post a link. You can find them at www.cheesemaking.com. This is an excellent wax. They offer a yellow wax, a red wax, and a black wax. I like the black best. You cannot use just regular wax you would find on your grocery store shelf. It's too brittle. This is softer. If you look at this nice sharp corner up here, you can see if I press it hard with my thumb that I can shape it. This is the perfect wax for me for waxing cheese, and I'm going to show you why. It's also reusable. Once you take it off your cheese, you can wash it, re-wax it, and use it again. That's why I like it. So I have used a good bit of cheese lately, and I'm going to be washing some wax today, and let me show you how it looks when it comes off the cheese. You see little bits of yellow that have come off my cheese. You can see that it's very, very oily. The cheese, the outside of the cheese yields up a lot of oil, so you need to wash that off before you can reuse it. I don't use terribly hot water because of the softness of this wax. I start with just warm water. If I have cut my cheese off like this, where there's a corner, I open it up. So I'm just opening that up with my hands so that I can make it perfectly flat to wash. So I get everything off with my fingers that I can see, all the yellow. There's a little bit more left there. You can scrape it with your fingernail. That's kind of embedded in there. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm looking at wax that there's no cheese on it at all, but you can see, I hope the camera can pick that up, that it's still kind of oily. I use a good soap like a Dawn or anything that you have that really cuts grease. I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of it right here, and then with my finger I'm just going to take that. I got a little wax on my fingernail there. I'm just going to take it and rub it on that wax. I like doing this with my fingers best. I guess you could do it with a dish towel, but you wouldn't really know if you got it all off. I just wipe it down like that really good and then rinse it off. And it should still feel, of course, very waxy, but it's not going to feel greasy. If it does, you do it again. And mine does feel just a little bit, so I'm going to go over one more time. Just rub it and rinse it off. Yeah, see, here's the back of it, nice, just like I put it on the cheese. So I just examine it one more time, make sure I haven't left anything on there. There's one tiny little yellow speck right there. I'm going to get that off. And that looks really good. And so then I'm going to set this on a rack and just let it dry really well, because you cannot use it at all if it's wet. You cannot get any of that moisture into your pot of wax. So you can pat it dry with a paper towel and then just let it dry on a like a cooling rack, like a cookie sheet. So here's the next one. You can see it's got a little yellow on it. This one's really easy because it's terribly flat. I just go over it with the soap. This one's not going to take much. Rinse it off, and then that's perfectly good reusable wax. Isn't that wonderful? Just recycle that wax. So I'm going to keep at it here and wash the wax I have, and then we're going to wax some cheese. That's all for now. This is an old pot I bought at a garage sale for 25 cents. It has a nice long handle. It's not a very big pot. In fact, it's a 1-quart pot, but I got it for a quarter, which I think is pretty good. And I really recommend you buying an old pot that you use exclusively for melting wax in. When I get through waxing my cheese, I let the wax in the pot harden, and then on one of my food storage shelves, all I do is turn that pot upside down so no dust or anything gets into it. When I'm ready to wax again, I just go grab my pot. My wax is already in it. If I have leftover wax, if not, then I use one of those blocks like you saw and just put it in here to melt. So what I'm doing now is I am drying the wax, the used wax that I washed, and I'm going to put that in that pot. As I dry each piece, and you need to make sure they're perfectly dry. I didn't have time to let them wait on a rack to air dry because I want to show this to you. So you just make sure there's no moisture on it whatsoever, and you throw your used wax back in that pot. It's as simple as that. I'm going to get it heating on the stove. It's best to do in a boiling water bath. Well, I've done too much canning. It's best to do in a double boiler where you have a pot of hot water under it instead of just putting this directly on the stove, because wax is highly flammable. You can never take your eye off of it once you begin heating it. So I'm going to get all this used recycled wax in here, and then I'm going to get it heating on the stove, and I'll come back to you. I wanted to show you this because this is a partial fail to me. This is the last batch of cheese I waxed, and I've never had this problem before, but I've figured out what it is now. What the problem is. If you look in this is the bucket I store my waxed cheese in, and I usually have a layer of wax paper on here, and I'll have another layer stacked up on here. I try to leave space in between each block of cheese. If you look in the bottom here, there's a piece of wax paper down here, and if I lift it up, you'll see some yellowy orange stuff down here. What that is water and fat that has oozed out of the cheese. And the problem was, and is, just like so many other foods we buy, they have left so much water in the product, and they do that intentionally, because if you buy an 8-ounce blocks of cheese, they've probably left an ounce or so of water in there just so that they're having you buy water instead of cheese, actually, when they really should have aged that cheese a little longer and let that water evaporate out. So now I've got a little bit of an issue here. I need to use this cheese, in the next couple of months. It's still usable. All that's happened is that the water has built up in there and actually seeped out of the wax. And I'm going to open one of these to show you. See, the layer that was sitting on top kind of left a little oily film there. So I'm going to pull one of these out. And see, it's even kind of caused them to stick together. Did you see that water gushing out of there? Okay, here we go. I'm going to open it up here on this paper towel, and it's kind of even swollen the wax because the water has built up. It's really kind of shameful how much water they left in this cheese. And this was a name brand mild cheddar. I always use mild cheddar because the flavors intensify as you store it. So watch here. Here's the water that's going to pour out of there. Isn't that amazing? Just amazing. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut down the corners just because it makes it easier when I wash the wax. Okay, and now I'm going to fold these open this way. So here we go. Here's my cheese. And it looks kind of watery, and it is. Look at the water just pouring out of it. It's just astounding. So here's what I do. All I do, now usually on my wax cheese you don't have to do this. Because the water has seeped out, so has some of the salt. That's what you're seeing there. The salt has come to the surface. I'm going to wipe this off Prepper A, would you bring me another paper towel, please? And I don't have dirty fingernails. I've cleaned my wax today, so I've got some of that black wax under my fingernail here. So I'm just scraping the salt that's come to the surface, and then what I'm going to do is take a clean paper towel and just wipe that cheese off, get all the moisture off of it. This cheese has been stored for, maybe 6 months. So I've got all the moisture off of it and those little beads of salt that came out when the water came out. And this is what I'm left with. Okay, there's the wax. And here we go. Here's the cheese. Now this cheese, let me wipe this off. This cheese you can slice, or it crumbles beautifully. So I can slice it like this. If you want to make grilled cheese sandwiches, I'm going to slice it on this paper towel. So you can get slices out of it, just like this. But here's what I love to do, because I don't have to get the grater out when I'm going to make a casserole. If I want to take a chunk of this off, like this, it is now, it's not, I mean, it's cool to the touch, but it's not wet. And all I have to do is just break it apart like this. Just break it apart. It just crumbles right up and will go right into my casserole. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to pop a piece of this in my mouth right now. It is divine. It is rich. It has a depth of flavor. It now is no longer mild cheddar cheese, but leaning toward the medium or sharp. It is delicious. It's better than any cheese you can buy in your regular grocery store counter. It tastes like a deli cheese that has been aged, an expensive cheese. Here, I'm going to hand a piece to Paladin Prepper. Tell me what you think after you taste it. He loves it like I do.
That's excellent.
It's delicious.
I always love it.
It's just delicious. So that's exactly how it looks after it's unwaxed. It looks even better if you dry it. That's the solution. That's why I showed you the very first night before I started this video, where I cut the cheese blocks in half. I wiped them down very lightly with vinegar so no mold would grow, and I have them drying on a cookie sheet. They've been drying for 48 hours, and now we're going to go to the stove, and I'll show you how the wax is melting, and then we'll wax some cheese. Alright, I'm back, and I have melted my wax in a double boiler. You can see that it's hot. Here's my little 25-cent pot I bought, and I just put it in a pot of boiling water. The wax manufacturer recommends that you can't hardly see this because it's fogged up, that you get your wax to 210 degrees, which I've done, and wipe off your thermometer right away, and you'll be able to get that wax right off. So here's the cheese that I've had drying for over 48 hours, because I wanted to remove that moisture like you saw in the other cheese that I took out of this big plastic tin. So you can see it has yielded up some of its oil. It's gotten rid of a lot of moisture. It's dry to the touch on the outside, still cool though. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to wipe the wax off of the cheese, and it's pretty dry on the outside edges, so I don't think I'm going to have any problem with this cheese, because I've made sure that I got the moisture out. And you can see on this paper towel the oil that it's getting off the surface of that cheese. I want that off because I really want the wax to adhere to it. So I'm just going to finish up here. It's only going to take me just a second, and then we're going to start dipping the cheese in the wax. And I've got black wax under my fingernails. I'll have to get some hot water after that. I think this is the last one. Yeah, here we go. Paladin Prepper's videoing this for me. So the cheese is, it's not really hard, but you can tell that the edges are much harder than when I took it out of the package. But I'm going to evaporate all the water they left in that cheese out of there, so that I don't have an issue. And this cheese, you'll remember, was brushed with or wiped with a little bit of vinegar to keep any mold or anything like that from growing out. So you can see this paper towel has a good bit of oil on it that I got off the cheese. So that's perfect. Now, my hands are impeccably clean, and that's very, very important when you start this. So here we go. Here's my liquid wax, and I'm going to dip a little more than halfway. I'm going to let it drip off, and I'm going to set it on the unwaxed end. Go to the next one. Dip halfway. Let it drip. Set it here. It's that easy. Whoops, went a little more than halfway, not a problem. I really like the black wax because when you saw me washing my wax that I'd taken off cheese, it's very easy to see if you've left any little particles on there. If you were to use the yellow wax, it would be incredibly difficult. And I think it would be somewhat difficult on the red as well. But on that black wax, I have no problem seeing if I've left any old cheese on that wax. The other thing, when I melt the old wax in this pot, if I should have left a little piece of debris, if there's any that I accidentally left in there, if I just fold my paper towel and make a point out of it like this, I can go right into that wax and lift that little foreign body out of the wax so that it looks perfectly clear, just like this. Now, this wax dries dries to the touch very quickly. I can touch it now and not have any problem. You can see a little oil on there just from my fingers. So now I go in and I re-wax, making sure that I wax just above the line where I dipped before. That's how it looks. And then I'm careful to turn the newly waxed end up. Here I go again. In with this one. Be sure I go above the line before, so you can see it's darker right here where there's actually 2 layers of wax where I came up above the first line. Turn it up this way. Do the other one. I have learned that more is not better. I thought one time that I would do 3 coats of wax on the cheese. It's not better. All right. We're going to try this again and see if we can get this finished up here. As I was saying, more is not better in waxing cheese. 3 coats is not better than 2. 2 is really sufficient, and it holds up better than 3 coats. Now here is one piece of cheese that I waxed once on this end and once on this end. You can see the slight overlap here. Here's one that I've dipped twice on this end, only once on this end, and you can see the difference in color. So I'm going to continue on with this piece of cheese. I'm dipping halfway and turning, dipping halfway and turning the hot side up, and I just continue on, and it goes very, very quickly. I let the majority of the wax drip off in the pot and turning the hot side up. Last one. Okay, so they all have one complete coating and then one end dipped the second time. So here we go. This one has 2 coats on the top, 1 on the bottom. So I'm putting the final coat of wax on that piece of cheese and turning the hot end up. That's all there is to it. I'm going to do the rest of these so that each piece of cheese has 2 complete dippings on both ends. And then I'm going to put them on this cookie sheet right here to dry and harden overnight. And then tomorrow I'll come and I have cleaned my cheese bucket and relined it with wax paper, and I will stand them up in here, not touching, and put them in the coolest place in my house. I actually have a room that the windows are darkened and we have the air conditioning vent open in there, and we don't go in that room very much and it stays cold, and that's where I put these, on a shelf in my food storage. And when I want to use them, all I do is cut the wax off and do whatever I would normally do with regular cheddar cheese. It's a wonderful way to preserve cheese. Now Here's the brush. We have searched all over for this brush. I knew it was here, and when I lifted up the bucket, I found it. I bought this brush when I bought the cheese wax. It's a natural bristle brush because they suggested that you have it in case you had a spot, like this. There's a little dip in the cheese right there. If a little indentation in the cheese. If I wasn't able to get that filled in with the wax, then you could dip the brush in your wax and brush it over that until you had it all closed in. I have never used this because I found dipping the way I do is sufficient. I have complete coverage, and everybody says that once you get this thing dirty, it's very, very difficult to clean, that you have to heat it and get the wax out of it. I have found that it's an excellent brush for cleaning out my wheat grinder and getting into all those little crevices, and I just use it for that. I think I paid $6 or $7 for it. If you like the idea of brushing wax on, that just seems like a pain to me. I'd much rather dip it. So I've used this brush for something else and really wish I would have known I didn't need it because I could have spared myself the expense. But that's all there is to it. Be sure you try to get your wax to 210 degrees. Dip your cheese twice. Let it dry and harden overnight, although it's very hard to the touch. But I just still let it harden on that rack for 24 hours, and then I store it away. I do not cover this plastic container. Store it open because this needs to breathe and have air circulating among the cheese. I can't tell you how long it lasts. We've never had it last more than a year. We love it. We think it's the best cheddar cheese we've ever eaten, and it's amazing that I just started with actually these were like this. It was an 8-ounce block of cheese I bought at my grocery store. I cut them in half, and you go from just regular cheddar cheese to gourmet cheese. I know you've been waiting for this video. I hope now that you'll really try it, that you'll let me know how you like it. And I can't think of anything else. If you have any questions, just PM me or leave the question in the comment section. I'll try to get back to you. Katzcradul.